I bet he couldn't even find the ignition. Victor Barnes, executive assistant to the CEO, smirked as he gestured toward the janitor cleaning scuff marks near the helipad's edge. Go on, Sophie. Ask him. It'll be funny. Sophie Cole, CEO of Cole Industries, allowed a rare, amused smile to cross her lips. It had been a long day of brutal negotiations, and a moment of levity was welcome. The janitor, a quiet black man in his late 30s with tired eyes, seemed completely oblivious, focused only on his work. You think so? Sophie asked, playing along, adjusting the silk scarf that complemented her deep brown skin. I'll bet you $1,000 he doesn't know the first thing about a Bell 429, Victor whispered conspiratorially. All right, Sophie said, her voice carrying across the windy rooftop. She walked toward the janitor, her natural hair styled in an elegant updo that defied the wind. You, she called out. The man looked up, startled. She pointed a perfectly manicured finger at her personal helicopter, its blades gleaming in the afternoon sun. My assistant and I have a little wager. If you can fly this helicopter, I'll marry you. The man stared at her, then at the chopper, his expression unreadable. Victor snickered behind her. The janitor wiped his hands on a rag, walked past her without a word, and opened the pilot's side door. Sophie's smile faltered. She exchanged a look with Victor, who simply shrugged, his own amusement growing. This was better than he'd hoped. The man would sit in the seat, push a few random buttons, and then get out defeated. But the janitor didn't just sit. His movements were fluid, economical, and unnervingly familiar. He strapped himself in with the practiced ease of someone who had done it thousands of times. His dark hands moved across the console, not with the fumbling curiosity of a novice, but with the precise touch of a surgeon. A sequence of switches was flipped. A low whine began to build from the engine. What is he doing? She murmured, her amusement evaporating. He's bluffing, Victor said, though his voice now held uncertainty. There's no way! The whine of the turbine intensified, pitching higher until it became a deafening roar. The main rotor began to turn, slowly at first, then faster, blurring into a transparent disk above them. The wind from the blades whipped Sophie's hair across her face and forced Victor to step back. Before Sophie could shout, before she could order him to stop, the helicopter lifted. There was no lurch, no wobble, just a perfectly smooth vertical ascent of about 20 feet. It hung there for a moment, impossibly still, then tilted forward and executed a flawless pirouette, the nose of the aircraft dipping in a gesture that felt almost like a bow. Victor's jaw was hanging open. Sophie stood frozen, her mind struggling to reconcile the man who cleaned her office floors with the pilot executing a maneuver that her own highly paid aviator would have called showboating. The helicopter banked sharply, zipping out over the city skyline before returning to hover directly over the helipad. With the same unnerving grace, it descended, touching down so gently that the landing skids barely made a sound. The engine began to spool down. Silence returned to the rooftop. The pilot's door opened and the janitor stepped out. He closed the door with a soft click, walked back to his cart, picked up his spray bottle, and resumed scrubbing the scuff mark on the floor. He didn't look at them. He didn't say a word. Who are you? Sophie found her voice, though it came out as a strangled whisper. The janitor, Daniel Price, finally looked up. His eyes were calm, but there was a deep, unyielding wall behind them. Just the janitor, ma'am. He gave a slight nod. Have a good evening. He pushed his cart toward the rooftop exit, the squeak of its wheels the only sound. Wait, Sophie called out, but he was already gone, the heavy steel door clicking shut behind him. Victor finally snapped out of his stupor. That was impossible. Who was that guy? No, Victor, I did not know, Sophie said, her mind racing. She ran a multi-billion-dollar corporation. She vetted everyone from her board members to her chefs. Yet a man with the skills of an elite pilot was pushing a mop through her headquarters, and she knew nothing about him. Her phone buzzed. A message from the board's chairman. Tokyo is getting cold feet. The deal is on life support. Fix it. Sophie's jaw tightened. The deal with Tanaka Corp was everything. It would secure their dominance for the next decade. Victor's reports had assured her everything was on track. She looked at the helicopter, then at the door where the janitor had disappeared. Two impossible problems had just landed on her desk, and for the first time in years, Sophie Cole had no idea which one to solve first. "Get me everything we have on Daniel Price," she snapped. "Employee file, background check, everything. Now." Victor hurried to his terminal. A file appeared on the monitor, almost completely useless. Daniel Price had been hired 8 months ago. Address in a working-class neighborhood across town. Previous employment listed as self-employed, logistics, and transport. No references. His background check was clean. No criminal record, no credit issues, nothing. He was, on paper, a ghost. "This is it?" Sophie asked, her voice dangerously low. "This is all we have on a man who can fly a $9 million aircraft like it's an extension of his own body?" "The agency we use is the best," Victor said defensively. "If there was something to find, they would have found it." Sophie shot him a look that could curdle milk. "Naturally gifted doesn't cover a zero-G pirouette 50 stories above downtown. He's a professional and he's hiding. Find out why." She turned to the more pressing fire. "And explain to me why I'm getting panicked texts about Tokyo when you told me yesterday that Tanaka was all but signed." Victor straightened his tie, his expression a careful blend of concern and calm. "It's a minor snag, Sophie. A cultural misstep. Tanaka-san felt our final offer was too aggressive. I'm already drafting a new proposal. I assure you, it's under control." "Under control? Victor, this is a $50 billion deal. We don't have minor snags." "Let me handle it," he said, his voice soothing. "It's what you pay me for." She studied him for a long moment, then nodded curtly. "Fine. Handle it. But if I get one more text like that, you'll be handling your severance package." Daniel Price pushed open the door to his small apartment. The stale air of the hallway was instantly replaced by the smell of cinnamon and warm laundry. "Daddy!" A small girl with bright eyes and beaded braids launched herself at him from the couch. Daniel dropped his worn backpack and scooped her up in a hug that seemed to melt the tension from his shoulders. "Hey, Firefly," he murmured into her hair. "How was your day with Mrs. Gable?" "It was okay," Leah said, pulling back to look at him. "We finished the volcano for my science project. It has extra baking soda for a super eruption, but Mrs. Gable smells like mothballs." Daniel laughed, a genuine warm sound that would have been unrecognizable to anyone at Cole Industries. "Well, don't tell her that. Did you get your homework done?" "All of it," she said proudly. "And I practiced my spelling words. Even pterodactyl." "You're getting too smart for me," he said, setting her down. "Go get washed up for dinner." As she scampered off, Daniel glanced around the small, meticulously clean apartment. Every piece of furniture was second-hand, but well cared for. Leah's colorful drawings were taped to the walls. On a small desk sat a framed photo of a woman with a smile as bright as Leah's, her arm draped around a younger, happier-looking Daniel in a flight suit. This was his world, not a skyscraper or boardroom. It was a 2-bedroom apartment where the only thing that mattered was keeping his daughter safe, happy, and far away from the life he'd left behind. The rooftop had been a mistake, a stupid, reckless impulse. He had let his guard down, and now he could only hope the consequences wouldn't follow him home. Sophie stared out at the city lights, unable to shake the image of the janitor's hands on the controls, steady, confident, sure. She had built an empire on reading people, but Daniel Price was a locked room with no key. As she exited the building, she saw him across the street at a bus stop, staring down at his phone with a small, sad smile. For a second, she considered walking over, demanding answers. But what would she say? The bus pulled up, and Daniel disappeared into the crowd of tired commuters. Sophie watched until the tail lights vanished. She got into her car. "Just drive," she told her driver. If she wanted to know who Daniel Price was, she would have to find out herself. The annual Coal Industries picnic was mandatory fun that Sophie usually endured for 20 minutes. This year, it was the perfect observation deck. She found them near the lake. Daniel sat on a checkered blanket with his daughter, helping her construct a small boat from leaves and twigs. Without the janitor's uniform, he looked different. Younger, more relaxed, but with persistent watchfulness in his eyes. "Mr. Price," Sophie approached. Daniel looked up, and for a split second, a guarded look crossed his face before being replaced by neutrality. "Ma'am." "This is your daughter?" "This is Leah," Daniel said, his hand resting protectively on his daughter's shoulder. Leah looked Sophie up and down with unfiltered honesty. "Your face is so serious. Are you mad about the grass?" Sophie blinked. "No, I'm not mad about the grass." "Okay," Leah said, apparently satisfied. She held up her creation. "Look, it's a boat for the Frog King. It's a very structurally sound boat," Sophie offered, feeling ridiculous. Daniel's lips twitched in a ghost of a smile. "She's the chief naval architect." The conversation stalled until a high-pitched buzzing filled the air. One of the VPs was showing off a drone, making it perform swoops over the lake. Daniel's reaction was instantaneous. His posture stiffened. His eyes tracked the drone with the focused gaze of a predator. He flinched, barely perceptible, as if bracing for something to follow the buzz. The relaxed father was gone, replaced by someone harder, colder, more dangerous. Sophie saw it. The mask had slipped. The moment passed. The drone flew away. Daniel forced his shoulders to relax. "Daddy, can we get ice cream?" Leah asked, oblivious. "Sure, Firefly," Daniel said, his voice too tight. He stood and looked at Sophie. "If you'll excuse us, ma'am." They walked away, but Sophie stood rooted. He wasn't just a pilot. That reaction was from someone who had seen drones in a very different context. From across the lawn, Victor watched Sophie staring after the janitor. He pulled out his phone and sent a text. "The CEO is distracted. Accelerate the timeline." "It's worse than I thought," Victor said, holding a tablet with emails from Tokyo. "Tanaka-san's board is interpreting our revised offer as weakness. They're calling it desperate." Sophie snatched the tablet. The message contained new non-negotiable demands, a larger stake, lower price, board seats. It wasn't negotiation. It was surrender. "They're gutting us," Sophie breathed. "I don't understand how this happened," Victor said with feigned disbelief. "It's almost as if someone tipped them off that we were desperate." The chairman called minutes later. The board was convening an emergency session Friday. She had until then to fix the deal or present an alternative. The threat was clear. She was on the verge of losing her father's company. Defeated, she walked to the window overlooking the helipad. The helicopter sat silent, a monument to power she no longer felt she had. She thought of Daniel's calm certainty as he'd mastered the machine. An idea, wild and desperate, began to form. She found him cleaning a deserted conference room on the 48th floor. "Price," she said, "I'm not here to talk about your job. I'm here to talk about your other one." His expression didn't change. "I only have one job." "Stop it," she snapped. "I saw you at the picnic. Your reaction to that drone. That's muscle memory, the kind you get when that sound is followed by gunfire. He remained silent. "The Tanaka deal is collapsing," she said, laying all her cards on the table. "There's a man, Hiroshi Watanabe, a recluse who has Tanaka's ear. If I can speak to him face to face, I can salvage this. But he lives on a private island off British Columbia, accessible only by helicopter. There's a storm moving in. Commercial flights are grounded." She took a breath. "My pilot is out. I need someone who can handle rough weather and doesn't exist on official flight logs. I need you." Daniel picked up his bucket and started toward the door. "You're mistaken, ma'am. I'm a janitor." "Everyone has a price," Sophie said, her voice hardening. "Not me," he replied without looking back. "What about your daughter?" He froze, then turned, fire in his tired eyes. "You leave her out of this." "I can't," Sophie said, hating herself, but seeing no other way. "I know you spend a third of your salary on copay for her medication. I know your insurance has a lifetime cap you're approaching. I know you watch her breathe, terrified it might be the one that hits." His face paled, the mask crumbling to reveal profound fear. "One flight," she said. "Get me to Watanabe and back, and I'll set up an irrevocable trust in Leah's name. All medical expenses covered for life, her entire education through graduate school. She'll never worry about a single bill." He stood motionless, caught between ghosts and his daughter's future. Finally, he spoke in a flat voice. "Fine. I'll do it. But we have terms. I'm listening. First, the trust is drawn up by my lawyer, funded in full before takeoff. Second, this is a one-time contract. You don't ask about my past. Third, when we land, we go back to what we were, strangers." "Understood?" "Understood." An hour later on the rooftop, Daniel had transformed. No longer a janitor but a commander, inspecting the helicopter with obsessive meticulousness. The takeoff was impressive, no showmanship, only efficiency. They lifted into the turbulent night sky, banking sharply northwest. For an hour they flew in silence. "Why?" Sophie finally asked. "Why push a mop when you can do this?" He was quiet. "Because this gets people killed. Pushing a mop doesn't." Before she could respond, the helicopter jolted violently. A wall of black clouds loomed ahead. Rain lashed against the windshield. The aircraft dropped suddenly. "Hey," Daniel said, his voice steady through the chaos. "Look at me. I've got you. Just breathe. I've flown in worse." She met his eyes and saw absolute certainty. He wasn't just a pilot, he was a lifeline. The crosswinds hit 80 knots. Alarms blared. Daniel's hands moved constantly across the controls, wrestling the storm. He found a layer of stable air below the shear, banking sharply before leveling out. "How did you do that?" Sophie asked, heart hammering. "I fly the plane," he said. "Not the weather." 20 minutes later, they landed on Watanabe's windswept island. Hiroshi Watanabe, an old man with sharp eyes, listened to Sophie's pitch for an hour in silence. When she finished, he spoke. "You speak of profits and margins. These are temporary. My friend Tanaka values loyalty. He believes you've shown none." Sophie's face fell. She'd come for nothing. Watanabe's gaze shifted to Daniel. "You flew through this storm for her plan?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, sir. You must have great faith in it." Daniel glanced at Sophie. "Sir, I don't know about her plan. But I've been in situations where plans fall apart. When that happens, you trust the person flying next to you." Watanabe studied Daniel, saw the janitor, pilot, and soldier all in one. Then he looked at Sophie and saw not just a CEO, but a leader who inspired that trust. A slow smile spread across his face. "I see." He reached for an old phone. "I'll make the call." Back at Coal Industries, Victor paced his office. His contact confirmed the impossible. The janitor was flying. Sophie's gamble might pay off. He picked up his phone. She's gone rogue. Frame it as a mental health crisis. Leak the flight details. I want an emergency board vote at 8 a.m. tomorrow. Relief washed over Sophie as they lifted off from the island. Watanabe had made the call. Tanaka would reopen negotiations. She'd saved the company. Thank you, Daniel, she said with genuine gratitude. Her phone buzzed. Subject, mandatory emergency board meeting. She read the memo about her erratic behavior and unauthorized journey. Victor had moved for the kill while she fought for the company. How fast can this thing go? She asked, trembling. Daniel glanced at the message and fuel gauge. Not fast enough. They're ambushing you. He saw the storm front on radar and a narrow jet stream along its edge. Dangerous, but it would cut travel time in half. There's one way, he said grimly. But you won't like it. I don't have to like it. I just have to survive it. He banked hard toward the storm's edge. The ride was violent, but his control was absolute. They were using the storm. Victor planned this, Sophie said. All of it. The bad advice. Everything. He's been playing the long game. As they flew, Daniel shared his story. My wife Sarah was Air Force pararescue. So was I. On our last deployment, a rescue mission went wrong. Bad intelligence. We lost 2 medics and Sarah. She died pulling the last man onto our chopper. His voice was thick with memory. I realized all the training, all the skill. It doesn't matter. You can do everything right and still lose. So I left, took Leah, and disappeared. I took a job where the only thing at stake was a clean floor. Sophie's tablet pinged weakly. A board ally was asking for proof of Victor's sabotage. Daniel noticed a folder. K_archive_encourier. That's not a backup folder, he said. That's a digital dead drop. He's running a shadow network in your system. They touched down with 10 minutes to spare. Daniel was no longer the janitor. He was the soldier. They're expecting you to be defensive, he said. Go in there and stall. Argue, accuse Victor. Keep them focused on you. You're the bait. What are you going to do? Victor built a hiding place in your network. I'm going to make him burn it down himself. She handed him her master keycard and admin password without hesitation. In the boardroom, Victor presented his case perfectly. Doctored emails, manipulated projections, the rogue flight. Sophie fought back spectacularly, buying Daniel time. 2 floors below, Daniel accessed the server room. He found Victor's ghost port and created a recursive loop, routing network traffic through the hidden archive. The system would crash, and diagnostics would point to Victor's folder as the source. In the boardroom, screens flashed red. Network integrity failure. A secondary alert appeared. Source, K_archive_NCR. Victor's face went white. If they performed diagnostics, they'd find everything. Stolen data, correspondence with rivals, his entire betrayal. I can fix this, Victor stammered, bolting from the room. Daniel watched Victor's login appear, then the command he was waiting for. Purge partition K_archive. Victor was destroying evidence. Daniel let it run while recording everything. Victor's credentials, the timestamp during a board meeting, the explicit command to destroy company data. A federal crime. Victor returned to the boardroom, dabbing his brow. I've isolated and purged the anomaly. Everything's stable. That's when Daniel walked in. He placed a tablet before Martin Hayes, the vice chairman. The corrupted packet has a name, Daniel said calmly. And a confession. The screen showed Victor's login, the timestamp, and the damning command. Purge partition K_archive equals true. That archive, Sophie said, which Mr. A. Barnes just illegally destroyed, contained all his correspondence with our rivals at Tanaka Corporation. Victor's composure shattered. That's a lie, He's a hacker. This janitor doctored that footage. His hysteria confirmed his guilt more than any evidence. Security, Martin said into the intercom. Now. As guards escorted Victor out, Martin turned to Sophie. On behalf of this board, I offer our deepest apologies. He looked at Daniel. And you, Mr. Price. We owe you a debt we can never repay. I was just taking out the trash, Daniel replied. When everyone left, Sophie and Daniel stood alone in the silent boardroom. So, she said with a tired smile. What now, contractor? I think my contract is terminated, ma'am. Sophie, she corrected softly. My name is Sophie. Daniel, he replied. A week later, Daniel had vanished. Resignation via email, final paycheck uncollected. The building felt sterile without him. Sophie called a company-wide town hall. For 10 years, I've measured success by stock price. I was wrong. A company is its people. She told them about a man with extraordinary skills who pushed a broom because no one looked past his uniform. How many more of you are there? She announced the Department of Human Potential to find and nurture every employee's talents. There was only one person who could run it. She found him at a park with Leah, building sandcastles. I need your help, she said, explaining the new department. He shook his head. I'm not a manager. I'm nobody. You're the man who saved this company, she said fiercely. You see what others miss? Leah tugged his sleeve. Daddy, you fixed the helicopter and the sad lady's company. You're good at fixing things. Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Sophie. Maybe a mission didn't have to involve combat. Maybe it was about building things up. Okay, he said with his first relaxed smile. I'll do it. The rooftop was quiet at sunset. Daniel stood there as Director of Human Potential, his department having already promoted a dozen employees from within. Sophie came to stand beside him. Leah held both their hands. It's beautiful up here, Sophie said softly. You know, she said playfully, I think I still owe you something. I said if you could fly this helicopter, I'd marry you. Daniel laughed deeply. He squeezed her hand, eyes meeting hers. The bet that started as an arrogant joke had somehow become a promise. As they watched the city lights twinkle below, they both knew it was a promise they intended to keep. The pilot who'd forgotten how to fly and the CEO who'd forgotten how to live had found in each other a safe place to land.